All right. It looks like we are live. Going to give it just a few minutes to populate. I know that we've got many individuals that are just getting signed on. My name is John Helmholt. I head up communications and external affairs for Grand Rapids Public Schools. Want to thank you all for joining us this evening. We are going to be recording this and we'll be posting it to the website at grps.org along with a copy of the PowerPoint presentation in both English and Spanish. Want to first start with an introduction of our board president, Ms. Christian Grant, to say just a few opening remarks.
Good evening. I want to take some time to say thank you, everyone, for attending the virtual town hall. Thank you for finding such an importance in education and the plan for our students. I also would like to thank the district and my fellow colleagues on the board for taking this time out to listen and to be responsive. I would like to commend you all for being as responsive as possible and really taking these decisions to heart, really understanding the weight of these decisions. Unfortunately, there is no one decision that is perfect for 17,000 students, but I appreciate the attentiveness that you all are giving this topic, and I look forward to listening to the conversation this evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Grant. Just a reminder about the ground rules. We're going to start tonight with a presentation, first an overview from Dr. Ledrian Roby, our superintendent, and then she will hand it off to Dr. Ronald Gorman, our assistant superintendent, who's going to walk through a PowerPoint presentation. So first 20 minutes or so will be a presentation that includes a higher level of detail in our proposed virtual learning plan. After that, we are going to open it up for questions and answers and comments. We are going to do that through the Zoom function that is on your screen. It's a little white box that says Q&A. If you click that at any time throughout the entire presentation or after that, you can enter your comment or question. I will then be reading them off for responses. Some of the questions may be duplicative, so I'm going to try to combine them. And then if and when we get to that 7 o'clock hour and there are questions that are unanswered, we're going to do what we did with the budget meeting back in June. We're tracking all of those. They come with emails. We are going to include responses in our frequently asked questions document that we are continuing to update and finalize. And just again, want to thank everyone for coming. And it's my honor to introduce our fearless leader, Dr. Ledrian Roby, for some opening remarks.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here for our virtual town hall. And just to reiterate what Ms. Grant has shared, we appreciate your engagement. We are trying to ensure that we have the very best program and offering for our students and our staff. Thank you for this opportunity to share what our plan is as we begin to roll out our plan for the 2020-21 school year. As you are aware, our academic team has been working very hard, collaborating with the teachers union, receiving feedback from parents and staff to put together the final details of our return to learn plan. Following our announcement last week, we have started to create plans virtually about the first 9 weeks. We've received largely positive support for the decision from our parents and staff alike, particularly putting student and staff safety first. Of course, there are also concerns raised, and they're not limited to the following that I'm going to suggest: the quantity, quality, rigor, and consistency of virtual learning, childcare issues and concerns, special education concerns, social emotional impacts of virtual learning, the implementation of the return in person or hybrid, ensuring the safety of students, staff, cleaning, and sanitization of our buildings. As you will see in the presentation, Dr. Gorman is going to unpack some of these issues and address other questions and concerns that may have been raised over the last few weeks. And in our plan, we will also include what the return to in-person learning and, the return to in-person teaching and learning may look like come later this school year. As we weigh our options of getting back to some form of in-person learning after the first 9 weeks, I think it's important to highlight our thinking and rationale about 100% distance learning versus hybrid or 100% in-person learning. We have repeatedly said that safety, health, and the well-being of our students and staff are and will continue to be the top priority for our decision-making. Some key points in favor of the 100% distance learning model. By far, the clearest choice when it came to safety, health, and well-being of our students, staff, and families. CDC guidelines for in-person learning are strict, expensive, difficult to ensure that there's fidelity and implementation across all classrooms and across all schools. The question is, can we effectively and consistently put mitigation strategies in place? As a district, I am confident that we can, but having the additional time over the next 9 weeks will help us be better prepared. The use of non-traditional spaces such as cafeterias, the media center, gyms, etc., when classrooms cannot effectively hold all of our students in the same space and follow those social distancing measures, and staffing and logistical challenges also require additional planning time for school leaders and teachers being a part of that process. Lastly, I have to emphasize the science is going to drive our practice, not politics. A 100% virtual learning for the first 9 weeks is the safest way to start school, and it allows us the necessary time for individualized plans at each school to be developed with direct input from our teachers, our school leaders, our support staff who will be responsible for implementing those plans. With that said, we know what's best for students, of course, academically, socially, emotionally, and physically is that in-person instruction. So while we are planning the 100% virtual start, we have been and will continuously work towards being, between now and October 21st, a very detailed plan on a multi-entry points for face-to-face learning or even hybrid instruction. Any reopening for hybrid or 100% in-person will be informed by federal, state, and county health officials, as well as the governor's office, using science and data to drive our decisions. We're going to closely monitor what's happening in other districts and trend lines, particularly those in our region, to see what's working, what may not be working, and what may be the appropriate evolution for rolling out in-person learning for Grand Rapids Public School students. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gorman for the presentation related to our Return to Learn plan. And again, as Mr. Helmholtz suggested, we will be available for questions and respond to feedback related to our plan. Dr. Gorman?
Thank you, Dr. Roby. If everyone will just have a little patience while I share my screen. Okay, Dr. Roby, may I get a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Thank you. So thank you everyone for being here this evening. I am going to, of course, walk you through our return to school plan. And so let me just get started with an overview. As Dr. Roby referenced, for the first 9 weeks, we will be in a virtual learning environment. What makes this year different from the spring is we are going one-to-one with computer and internet access for all students. We were not one-to-one in the spring, and we were not one-to-one in previous school years. So we will be one-to-one, and we are going to maximize access for our students. The learning platforms that will be used for our distance learning plan will be Seesaw for PK5. This model was used in the spring, and then Google Classroom for 6-12. We will also be piloting something called Schoology for some schools, and those schools will be notified and the families will be notified relatively quickly. But the Schoology piece and the one-to-one piece are some changes that we will have for the fall. This is something that I would like to bring to everyone's attention. Although in the first 9 weeks, we will be, of course, in a distance learning period, and I know there's a lot of text on this slide. We will be looking into a plan for when we come back to school that has an A-B schedule. And nothing, of course, is etched in stone. We'll be collaborating with our stakeholders to determine the exact plan as we return to a face-to-face model. but one scenario could be half of the class is in session on Monday and Tuesday, of course, with a Wednesday break. And then the other half of the class is in session on Thursday and Friday, of course, Wednesday being a deep cleaning day. Or we could have an AB week option as well, where half of the class goes to school 1 week, they work on asynchronous assignments in week 2, and then we flip-flop. So these are some ways that we can phase back into face-to-face instruction. But again, for the first 9 weeks, we will be exclusively online. Meal distribution under our plan will continue. We are going to, all Grand Rapids Public School students will be eligible for meals. We are going to begin meal distribution 1 day before school starts on August 24. All students will be eligible for a breakfast and a lunch each day. The days of distribution will be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So on some days, we will be doubling up meals, but students will have 10 meals a week. They will have 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches per week. The distribution sites, we've added a few more this time. We were in the spring, we had about 6 sites or so, and then we even scaled back to fewer sites than that. But we'll be at Alger Buchanan, Burton Campus, Cesar Chavez, City High Middle, Ottawa Hills High School, Dickinson, East Leonard, Gerald R. Ford, C.A. Frost, Harrison, Kent Hills, Sibley, and Westwood. And I'm sorry if I missed one there. You will see the times from 12 o'clock until 1:30. When I get into the instructional plan, you'll see why we scheduled our meal distribution at those times. Building access for staff. This is one thing that has changed significantly since the spring marking period. In the spring, our teachers did not have access to buildings. They were given essentially 1 day or a few hours to pick up their belongings and take them home with them. We're increasing access for our staff members this time. So Monday through Thursdays, of course, 4 days. There will be no access on Friday at all. That will really be a deep cleaning day, of course, going into the weekend as well. Staff members will be able to access our buildings from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. We are asking that staff members go alone. We do not want extra adults with our staff members, no children, folks accompanying them, etc. We want to put all the safety measures in place as possible. Of course, we'll be cleaning and sanitizing every Friday, every evening. That's why there will be really a hard stop there at 3 p.m. every single day so we can do some cleaning. And then we will be asking our staff members to follow our cleaning protocols. We want them to go directly to their classrooms, use the resources that will be at their disposal, and of course, clean their workstations, their doorknobs, anything they touched in the classrooms. We want to make sure that those are cleaned following protocols every single day. This is really just all about parent empowerment. So the first bullet speaks to schools being the first point of contact. In the spring of this school year, we had a very centralized approach to everything we did, from our newsletters to the resources we provided. We really want to get back to the schools being the first point of contact. So if there are any items that need to be addressed, we're asking parents to call the schools first. And then, of course, if there are other items that need to be addressed outside of the school, you'll see our tech support phone number. You'll see our distance learning help desk website. We're going to be providing parental support for from our parent university. Also, social emotional learning. We are going to have lots of modules at parents.grps.org. We're going to have translation services through our English learners office, and that is a direct number. We have lots of numbers in the school district. This one takes you directly to the English learners office. We are going to, of course, be empowering our PALs, our parent action leaders. We're going to be working with the Kent School Services Network, and also our family support services are going to be helping our families and our students as well. And then lastly on this slide, my assumption is there'll be lots of questions around special education. So this is our direct number to our special education office. Again, you don't have to call the general number. If you call this number, it will take you directly there. Okay, so GRPS device distribution and internet access. We are going one-to-one. That not only includes the computers, it also includes internet access. As you'll see, there are internet recommendations for our learning platforms that will need to be used. And then you will also see on the slide the acceptable devices. If folks have their own devices and are comfortable using their own devices and internet, that is encouraged. But again, we have enough devices to go totally one-to-one for the school district, and that's something we did not have in the spring. You'll notice here, there are a couple of bullet points. So really the first bullet point talks about, or the second rather, the sub-bullet, talks about identifying families with connectivity barriers. We're going to be working very closely with our teachers, our principals, assistant principals, secretarial staff to ensure that those folks who do not have devices get devices and to really address any challenges families may be having. We're going to be utilizing new and existing GRPS student devices. We heard a little bit of feedback last time that some of the devices maybe weren't fast enough or maybe a few were malfunctioning. We replaced many of our devices, specifically those iPads, so we will be distributing those shortly in a couple of weeks. And again, we'll be using additional hardware not currently owned by GRPS. We're asking folks to use internet, of course, but sometimes when folks don't have access to internet providers, a hotspot is a really good option. We distribute those hotspots as soon as you get home or your student gets home with his or her device. He or she can get right on and use the device because of that hotspot. So it's a nice resource. Okay, so here's device distribution. A letter was mailed that explains all of the specifics with device distribution. It'll be done in a comparable manner as it was done in the spring. We want to keep everyone as safe as possible. You'll notice that the distribution sites or the distribution period rather is longer than it was last time. If you look at the period of time from August 17 to October 23, this is really that 9-week distance learning period that we're in, and we want to make sure that every single student has access to a device, and we didn't really want to just focus on a 1-week or 2-week window. Of course, we want students to have devices and be ready to go for the first day of school, but if there are some issues, that window will be open much longer this year, all the way up until October 23. We're going to have some regional distribution sites this time. So we're going to be distributing computers at Ford, Harrison, Burton Middle, and then 1340 Thomas Southeast. This is formerly known as the Campus Early Childhood Center. If you're familiar with Franklin Campus, which is our central office, it's located right next door to us. Dates for distribution will be Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. So we added a little bit of time there, of course, for working families, so that they can get there after work and get those devices. Of course, device access, if there are any challenges with devices, there's a number here, the 616-301-1111. This is a number that we used a lot in the spring. And then there's also a website for distance learning help desk at grps.org. Professional learning for our teachers. So we began our professional learning yesterday with our principals and assistant principals, deans, school improvement facilitators. We had approximately 100 folks receiving professional learning yesterday. Many of the topics that I'm referencing right now were referenced yesterday in our professional learning. Of course, because of the climate we were in, it was heavy on COVID-19 safety protocols. That was facilitated by our legal counsel, Ms. Sharon Pitts, and also our lead nurse, Ms. Kim Barron. So they led those professional learning, and they will continue to continue to facilitate those professional learning experiences as we progress throughout the school year. There will also be professional learning on the learning management systems, one of which is Schoology. Again, that's only for some pilot schools. You'll see Seesaw, Microsoft Teams. Video conferencing is a big component of what we are going to do in the fall. And then lastly, much of the work that we began prior to COVID around social emotional learning, trauma-informed best practices, students at risk, equity, implicit bias, and culturally responsive education. This is really some of our core work, and we are going to continue to focus on this even during this period of time when we're in distance learning. Special education, lots of questions. Of course, I gave you the telephone number for any special education concerns. We're going to continue to have high expectations for all students, including our students with disabilities. Instruction will be synchronous and asynchronous, and accommodations will be made for no tech and low tech when needed. IEPs will have to be revised during this period of time, of course. We are going to do that. And then this next page is really the one of the only times where we are in kind of a face-to-face mode. Some of those special education evaluations will be done face-to-face. This is really one of the only opportunities in our academic setting where we will have face-to-face interactions. Of course, we are going to be adhering to IDEA, Michigan Administrative Rules, CARES Act, et cetera. We're going to make sure that we continue to follow all of our guidelines as it relates to special education. As it relates to our English learners, we know that there are significant challenges for our English learners during this time as well. So therefore, there will be synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And let me unpack that a little bit. What we're doing right now is synchronous, real time. You as the audience members can see us. The asynchronous piece has a lot more to do with assigning tasks to students that don't necessarily need to be done in real time. We are going to continue to engage our families, especially those who may have some language challenges that we can help with. And then, of course, we are going to connect our families with community agencies so that they get the very best supports that they need. Assessments. One of the mandates to getting back to school requires the Grand Rapids Public Schools and all other schools in the state to essentially give students some tests or administer screeners. We need to find out how much learning loss happened as a result of our previous distance learning period. So we are not going to be adopting a new test. These are some examples of some tests that we have in-house right now, some assessments that we have. Many are electronic, some are connected to the curriculum. So we are not going to be reinventing the wheel, so to speak. We are going to be using existing assessments to find out how much learning loss happened and really focusing in on those skills deficiencies if students have them as a result of our distance learning period that we previously had. After school programming will continue. There are 20 schools in the LOOP program. LOOP is our after school programming. These will be done in a distance learning format. LOOP will get started a little bit later than the normal school year. It will begin on September 8th. It will be 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. Of course, LOOP will focus on academic support and enrichment support, lots of tutoring opportunities during this time, and also some fun enrichment activities as well. And of course, our students will be enrolling online. Of course, parents will be enrolling their students online for after school programming. Athletics, getting a lot of questions about athletics. There is a tremendous amount of text on this screen. We are following all of the MHSAA rules as it relates to athletics. We have had athletics practices all summer, small groups. There have been pre-workout screenings for our athletes. There are checklists that need to be completed, and every single item needs to be checked before participation is approved. Of course, the athletics teams are much smaller groups. There are some athletics teams that have, of course, less than 10 players for some sports. And then there are others that have, 35 or 40 players. But again, that is a lot different than a school filled like a Union or a city or Innovation Central that has close to 1,000 students in it. So those are different. Our students have been following these guidelines. Our coaches have been following these guidelines. So athletics will continue during this distance learning period. So this here is a slide that shows the differences with distance learning in the spring and then in the fall. So let me just walk you through what some of the differences are. Of course, the big one is one-to-one student devices for all students. Approximately half of our students did not receive devices last time. We're thankful that all of our students will receive devices this time. Wireless hotspots and internet access for all families will be provided this time. Attendance was monitored last time, but it needs to be taken in a more formal manner as we go into the fall. So as of right now, when students are in classes synchronously, when they're interacting with teachers, teachers will be taking attendance using normal processes and protocols. So teachers will take attendance during those times where they have synchronous learning, and then we are seeking guidance from the Michigan Department of Education so that we can take attendance during asynchronous learning times. Grading last time, of course, it was based on participation for the most part. There was some credit, no credit for our high school students. This time there will be mandatory grading. There will be report cards. So the families, you'll be able to check grade book to see how well your students are doing, A through E grading scale, and there will be first marking period report cards. As it relates to the learning management systems, we use Seesaw and Google Classroom in the spring. We're using Seesaw and Google Classroom in the fall. Again, just to reiterate, Schoology will be used for some pilot schools and not all. And then again, a major difference, teachers had 1 day of access into classrooms in the spring. They're going to have 4 days of access throughout the week, Monday through Thursday, of course, with deep cleaning days on Friday. This is an overview of the, let me slide this over, I'm so sorry. This is an overview of a PK5, PK8 day. So I'm going to show you this slide, which is a general overview, and then I'm going to go into the next slide, which provides a little more specificity on the hours of the day. So on Mondays at the elementary level, teachers will have planning, preparation time, they will have staff development time, but there will also be asynchronous assignments for students. So those assignments that the teacher will assign more than likely during the synchronous time, teacher will say, okay, on Monday, I need you all to work on these particular assignments. And then of course, we will have some specials on Monday, art, music, and physical education. And those will be done in an asynchronous format. And we're doing it that way so there will be a tremendous amount of flexibility with our schedules throughout the week. As we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, that's when most of the synchronous learning takes place. Again, in an environment like we're in right now, where it's real time. So there is going to be time with the teacher of record, and I'll unpack that in the next slide. There's going to be time for some small group instruction to help students who maybe need a little more support. And there's going to be time for asynchronous specials throughout those days on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. On Friday, this could be a day for student assessments, asynchronous learning, student interventions, some office hours for teachers, and some professional development for our staff members. As I go into the next slide, this really unpacks for you what a day will look like. So of course, on a Monday, there will be 6 hours of responsibilities for a teacher, and you can see how that's broken down. From a student's perspective, of course, it'll be mostly it'll be all asynchronous learning assignments, both from the classroom teacher that he or she assigns, and then also from the specials teacher. On Tuesday, you'll see that there's 2 hours of whole group. Okay, so from 9 o'clock, and you'll see the times up above on this document, it goes from 9 o'clock until 12 o'clock. So from 9 o'clock until 11 o'clock, with breaks in between, of course, with a break in between, of course, students will be in a synchronous learning environment, like a video conferencing environment. Teachers during this time will be able to facilitate whole group instruction and also conduct breakout sessions if needed. There will also be an hour of small group time where the teacher brings in maybe a group of 4 or 5 students for that third hour of the day. It can be different groups of students throughout the week. And then of course, there will be asynchronous opportunities for the specials. And then of course, you'll see Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are heavy on synchronous time. And then Friday again is back to the asynchronous components and student assessments, student interventions, etc. As we go into the high school model, one thing that you will notice is we're trying to create as much consistency as possible. So students will be scheduled into their 1st through 6th period classes, much like they would be in a traditional school year. On Mondays from 9 a.m. until 12, high school students will be in class they'll start at 9 a.m. So they'll have a 9 a.m. class, a 10 a.m. class, and an 11 a.m. class. They'll really be completing their 1st hour, their 2nd hour, their 3rd hour. Teachers will be available after that to work on interventions, to communicate with families, to help students with assignments, etc. And then of course, to follow that pattern, there will be a prep hour for our for our secondary folks, which is 6th grade through 12th grade. You'll notice that the planning for the elementary piece was really heavy on that Monday because traditionally the elementary teachers have different planning times. Elementary teachers have planning times during their specials. High school teachers, or secondary teachers rather, have planning times 1 hour per day. So you'll see that Tuesday, students will be participating in their 4th, 5th, and 6th hour classes, following the same format with office hours and prep. And then on Monday, we're back to 1st, 2nd, and 3rd hour. And Thursday, we're back to 4th, 5th, and 6th hour. Friday can be used for student assessments, asynchronous learning, office hours, professional learning, and small group interventions. We will be sending by next week Thursday, we will be mailing to you those pre-K 5 and those pre-K 8 classroom assignments. So for elementary families, you'll be able to find out who your student's teacher is. By next week Thursday, we're sending that information out. And then for middle school and high school students, we'll be mailing out class schedules. So when we mail those class schedules, your student will follow his or her 1st through 6th period, just like he or she would during the normal school year. And principals and our school-based staff will be following up with families pertaining to these items that I've discussed. And then lastly, and John Helmholt may get into this a little more as it relates to how you opt in, but in order to receive text messages, robocalls, emails, you have to be able to hit the opt-in function so we're able to make that happen. Okay, lastly, last slide. As we talk about school and district communication, we really want to place emphasis on the school as the first point of contact. We were very centralized in the spring. We want to decentralize in the fall, but of course, providing those supports that you need from a district's perspective. The first number after you connect with a school, just with general questions, of course, is 819-2000. That is kind of a one-stop shop. That number gets you everywhere. If you need to connect with, let's say, a John Helmholt in communications, or me, or someone else, 819-2000, we can help guide you in the right direction. There's also going to be a distance learning hotline number, which is 616-301-1111. This was the number that was used in the spring that I shared in many of the videos that we created. This is going to be for tech support. So if there are any tech support needs, it's that particular number. Of course, the GRPS website that you can access at any time with updates, www.grps.org. There is a distance learning support website as well, and you'll see distance learning help desk at grps.org. And then Dr. Roby and her team are going to have quarterly listening sessions with the community to make sure that we are hitting the mark. So therefore, instead of a presentation like this and feedback, we are going to have similar formats where we just hear the voices of our community. Second to last, we have the live FAQ piece. So frequently asked questions. We had a tremendous amount of communication that went out in the spring. Some folks were very happy that we communicated so much. Others thought maybe we sent a few too many communications. So what we are going to do is we're going to make sure that there are living FAQs on our website. So when you go to our website, there are going to be FAQs and they're going to be updated periodically. So if you need to find the latest information, it will be right there for you. And then of course, with feedback and clarifying questions, one great place to go is communications@grps.org. You can always access that, and that is John Helmholtz's team. So thank you for sticking with me as I did my very best to get through that in a timely manner. And now I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Helmholtz.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gorman. We have over 55 questions, and that's after I think I've responded to about 20 already. So we're just going to dive right into it. We do have some other members of our cabinet that are available to be brought in. So if need be, we'll bring them in. So I'm just going to start right at the top. Kara Duncan asks, will the high school teachers be teaching from their actual classrooms and buildings or from home?
Dr. Roby, would you like me to take some of these questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Roby. So the high school teachers will have the option of teaching from their classrooms or teaching from home. There will be an option. Our number one concern is safety, but we also know that teachers will need some items in their classroom to support the learning that takes place. So they will have the option of being at home or in the classroom.
All right, Mary Bounds is asking, is making a statement. She's concerned that elementary seat time may be developmentally excessive for young learners.
John, is that a question or a...
Well, I'm not sure if you want to respond to it. I'm just kind of going through the comments.
It's a statement. I think it's not, I don't think it was a question. And I would say that it's in alignment with what other districts, as we've been comparing districts, plans and things that are in a hybrid or virtual model where there is some extended periods of time. And we are very conscious around breaking that up into smaller increments of time. So 3 hours, it's not 3 consecutive hours. It is broken up into smaller pieces. And there's some flexibility for teachers to kind of work in smaller groups with students so that they're not just from 9 a.m. to 12 working consistently on the computer.
Dan Ruzian is asking, what will distance learning look like for children enrolled in half-day Montessori pre-K?
Oh, that's a good question.
Of course, we will be, of course, working with the Montessorians. We know this is a learning style that is much different than the Montessori approach. We're relying heavily on Matthew Beresford, who is our executive director over that program, and many of our principals. There are many things that we used to do during the normal school day that unfortunately we cannot do in this distance learning period, but we are going to be taking recommendations. I don't think we have a firm answer right now as it relates to that, but we will take your question and get back to you.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing, Ron, is that what we will do is we'll connect with our team and we'll put together a response that will be incorporated in our frequently asked questions. And of course, we have your email too, so we'll be doing some follow-ups. Laura D is asking, for students who need to be evaluated for an IEP, is there a way to do so in the first 9 weeks or beyond if necessary? If not, how will they be accommodated?
I think that was part of the presentation that students who are in the evaluation process, either this fall or from last spring, we will have to invite those students in and coordinate that with the special education teacher and teams to ensure that they are evaluated.
Which schools will pilot Schoology and how was that determined? From Amy Mabin.
So I don't recall the schools, but it did come from teachers and building leaders from 2 or 3 schools that said, yes, we are ready to take on the pilot. We are very interested in this work. And so that's where we will begin with those schools and those leaders who have been identified as saying they are interested in piloting for the district.
Yeah. Next question is from Nina, and I'll take this one. How will theme school applications for Blandford Zoo Center for Ecology and City be handled for the 21-22 school year without map testing this fall? Will previous test scores be used? We are in the process of confirming what assessments will be given during the distance learning period and when we return to school buildings. If we are able to return in-school learning after the 9 weeks, we will plan on giving the map test. This is not a decision, though, that has been final, and we'll be working with the principals and our legal counsel as we need to make sure we're in compliance with board policy and the Office of Civil Rights. Next question, if we will be using additional spaces like gym, media centers, cafeterias, and such, will GRPS be adding additional staff to accommodate and are the teaching of these extra spaces?
So if we are adding those extra spaces, that would be on the assumption that we're probably on a hybrid where we're doing A/B schedules. And so we would not necessarily need to go to gyms or hallways or media centers, but we want to make sure, again, safety. And then there's also the supervision component of having smaller groups, making sure that we are utilizing our support staff that we do have in place, paraprofessionals and others to work with those smaller groups if we are back all together. So as a whole, no, we will not be adding more staff. We will be working within the staff that we currently have.
All right. Nancy Haynes asks, why did we go right to 9 weeks instead of a more measured approach of 2-week chunks by 2-week chunks? At the end of this 9-week period, our students will have been out for an entire marking period.
Good question. And so we followed, again, the guidelines of what was taking place earlier this summer, and we also included the voice of our families, which overwhelmingly said that they felt most comfortable in a virtual experience. With respect to 2 weeks or 2-week chunks, I know that some schools, some smaller school districts may be going into the 2-week chunks or some version of that. It becomes a little bit harder with a larger district because it's a little bit more complicated. It's like a big cruise ship trying to adjust a big cruise ship very quickly and nimbly. We want to make sure that even as we are ending our 9 weeks and hopefully we have moved on to higher phases, either phase 5 or phase 6, that we are gradually rolling our students back into school.
Next question from Tanya Gilbert. We, as well as other families, have chosen to leave GRPS because we're not in person. Why are other districts ready to start back in person but not GRPS?
The question related to that, every school district, and as everyone knows, I'm new to the community, of course. As I've been talking with other districts within the Kent County community, other superintendents, they have done just what I have done, tried to do as well, listen to the voice of my community. And each community is a little unique. And so we don't want to follow what doesn't work for Grand Rapids Public Schools. I'm very sensitive to asking people their voice and then responding to that voice as best I can. And I know that with any choice that we make, no one or everyone will not be happy, of course, but we're trying to do what's best safety-wise and structurally for our 17,000 students. And even with respect to some of the other districts, as I've even talked to them earlier today, they are changing their plans. So I think that you are going to see more districts that are looking at that virtual component as well, because people are very concerned. And as you know, it does change from day to day as to the feedback and responses that we are getting from our local officials.
Question, will teacher assistants, college students, be able to join their teachers in schools during the week?
Dr. Gorman?
So we are taking all plans into consideration right now. We will have some definitive answers as it relates to that relatively quickly, if not by the end of the week, early next week. We know that there are lots of student teachers out there and lots of commitments. Our number one priority is to keep staff members safe. So any decision that we make, that will be what we keep in mind, but we will have that decision really quickly. again, probably early next week as it relates to that topic.
Next question is, what procedures will be put in place for students, staff, and visitors who do not follow the safety guidelines?
So one of the things that everybody has heard consistently is, we're trying to mitigate risk, and we certainly ask and we expect our staff to follow guidelines that have been set before them. That becomes a different issue if not. Also for our students, we expect them to follow the safety guidelines as well. This is a safety issue for us. It is not a political one. And we want to make sure that we, one, communicate what the expectations are. We will have resources and supports for families and for staff so that they can follow those guidelines, but there is an expectation that they do follow the guidelines to be a part of said schools and also as they are working in the district.
All right, sorry if I'm banging because I'm typing here too. Jill McCauley asked, well, what will deep cleaning look like on evenings and Fridays in the classroom?
We're going to follow the guidelines that have been given for us and I'm not going to start naming products because I'll probably get myself into trouble from the standpoint of I won't have the correct names, but we'll certainly follow the procedures that have been outlined before us with respect to deep cleaning and sanitizing areas for safety.
Will food and nutrition be paid their hours even if they're not working the entire day? Example, sites work 9 to 2 and employees has 6.5 hours. Will they be compensated for the additional, what would be otherwise the other 1.5?
Yeah, we're gonna have, I don't know the answer and I don't want to say something that's inappropriate. And so that would be something that we certainly will work with our bargaining unit unions to make sure that there's an understanding around expectations and assurances. So I'm giving a non-answer, but I don't want to say the wrong answer.
Right. Alex Polk is, and I can take this. Some people work better with hard copies versus electronic materials. Are there plans to support students' ability to print if needed, at least until libraries open up? And Dr. Gorman, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are accommodating all students and meeting their needs, meeting all needs. And if the 100% virtual online is not what is best for that child, we will be looking at print and mailed materials.
Yes, and I think that's where the classroom teacher comes in. The classroom teacher, the building principal, et cetera, they need to look very closely at, which students are interacting through this virtual format, which students are experiencing difficulty. So I think that's where that small group time is a really good time to see, who's having difficulty. And then of course, monitoring attendance. I mean, that's piece. If there are some students who aren't showing up, we've got protocols in place so that we're calling our students who are not in attendance to find out what those barriers are.
How will we support seniors who would usually be working with counselors on college applications? There's concern that there's some that may be behind in the college search process.
We are still doing school. So our counselors and social workers and other ancillary and support staff that support the work of the classroom will still be in play, and we'll be connecting with seniors and connecting with them to ensure that they have applications and scholarship information similar to what they would do for in-person learning.
All right. I think this was answered, but I'm gonna repeat it because it looks like there's some nuance. When COVID-19 ended, their child was in the beginning of an IEP evaluation. IEP evaluation was not completed. Given that the first 9 weeks will be virtual, how will they receive completion?
By law, once we start that evaluation process, it does have to continue. And so for that individual student, they will continue wherever they left off to continue that assessment process.
All right.
So to kind of sum it up, whoever is working, that special education teacher or special education lead, should be reaching out to that family to set up times for the assessment and evaluation to continue. And if that does not happen, please reach out to that particular school.
How will parents be involved in decision-making process of plans as GRPS moves forward? Sometimes the PALs aren't the best way of including parents as co-creators in decisions and policies.
I didn't hear the second part. Sometimes the PALs are not what?
Yeah, that aren't the best way of including parents as co-creators.
Okay. And so we always start with the school site. Our parent advisory groups is a way to work very closely with schools and also PTA organizations, PTO organizations. We are doing listening sessions that will come forward, and we plan on announcing those dates soon to get feedback from parents related to what's working and what's not working, and also suggestions for other ideas.
All right. How will students access OT and social work services per their IEPs?
Their social worker, their special education teacher should be reaching out. They, all have caseloads and they are monitoring those students, but should be reaching out to coordinate times to meet with those students to make sure that we are meeting their individual learning plans.
All right. Oops. Bear with me. My son, I think my son has an IEP for speech. This is first year of high school. How do we continue his much needed speech therapy?
Same thing. And, transitional grades, it's important. Usually there is a handoff from middle school to high school or elementary to middle school between one special education teacher to the corresponding grade span special education teacher in the spring. That should still take place. And those special education teachers are talking about that young person to ensure that their needs and their goals are being met. And their new I keep saying social worker, their new special education teacher should be reaching out to that family and also to that student to ensure that they understand what their goals are and be working very closely with that young person.
So there's two questions that are in a similar vein. What plan does the district have to support parents working away from home and those students who are in daycare Monday through Friday? What, if anything, is the district doing?
So we have been talking about this. We know that this becomes a complicated issue for many families, and thinking about what resources community-wide through our PALs, through our social workers, through our counselors and our advocates within each school to have resources available and connections around different resources and supports. The second part of that question related to daycare. At this time, we are not able to offer a daycare program that would be a district daycare related program, but we are very sensitive to that and trying to figure out how do we help bridge that connection to other organizations within the community and links within the community that will support some of that for parents.
Next question, how many hours a day will students be expected to be, quote, available or, quote, in attendance during both synchronous and asynchronous learning?
Well, when we talk about synchronous learning, that is the kind of this exchange right now where we're all together and you're connected and you're able to ask questions. And so the short answer is at minimum the 3 hours from 9 to 12. The asynchronous time where teachers may give assignments to students or maybe checking in with them for smaller groups or individual tutoring or one-on-one sessions related to work that they may be doing, that's a little bit more fluid and flexible. So up to 3 hours per day, kind of online, and then whatever other work that they may be doing. So we expect it to be a true school day, which typically is about 6 hours. So there may be some things that students are doing offline or in a smaller group with study buddies or with their classroom teacher or their individual special education teacher.
Will every staff member be required to take implicit bias and equity PD that includes teachers, paras, principals, food service, et cetera?
So I'm going to answer the question with a question. I would hope, wouldn't you want to know and have equity bias trainings and so forth as we are working with our young people who come from all sorts of backgrounds, yes, there is an expectation that people will be engaged in that work because our students and our community come from such diverse backgrounds. We want to have a rich experience about what that understanding is, and not a check the box, but really trying to understand how our community is very intertwined and intermingled and come from different perspectives. So there is an expectation around that people will be engaged in a meaningful way around implicit biases or anti-racist practices, or how do you understand multicultural experiences of others.
I would just add, there was a phenomenal training that was with school administrators just this week on exactly those areas. And so this is something we take very seriously. Stephanie, will grades and homework still be posted on Student View and Parent View?
I didn't hear the first part. Will something be posted on grades?
So will grades and homework
Yes.
be posted on Student View and Parent View?
Yes, yes. Parents will still be able to, and students will still be able to access grades.
How will K-5 assessments be administered during the 9-week virtual learning period?
So we are working through that. And Dr. Gorman presented some of the assessment types. And if you look at the schedule, there are certain days where there's asynchronous learning, or parts of the day where there's asynchronous learning, where you might have smaller groups or individual groups. And then on certain days of the week where there's some planning time where teachers can use some of that time to connect with students that they may not have been able to connect with throughout the week.
Will classroom teachers be allowed to schedule synchronous time using Zoom and or Google Meets?
The expectation is that classroom teachers would be using the district adopted, district sanctioned platforms, which at present are Seesaw, Schoology for those piloted schools, and then at present we are using Google Hangout or Google Suite, the Google Suite format. I don't think, now correct me if I'm wrong, did we use Zoom last spring?
We did not, Dr. We did
Okay.
not, Dr. Roby.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Mm-hmm. Can you show the pre-K schedule?
Can we show the pre-K schedule right now?
That's what I think he's asking.
So I'll tell you what, John, can we post, how about we post the pre-K schedule to all that stuff to the website, just so we get a few more questions, and I don't want to be insensitive.
No.
Why don't we do it
Well,
that way?
that's good. I mean, there are 120 still outstanding questions. So will GRPS assist families who have lost their income due to COVID-19 with uniforms, supplies for kids when they return to school?
Dr. Gorman, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Yeah.
I don't know the history of it. I know that
Yeah.
sometimes districts have a partnership where we support.
Yeah.
I can take it, or John can.
Yep.
Through our foundation, we make sure that we're addressing the needs of our students. And so there are, of course, closets throughout all the schools with various sizes of uniforms. If there are hardships, we will get those hardships addressed. We want there to be no limitations as it relates to bringing students back. So we're going to need our teachers to let us know if students have needs, but absolutely, we're not going to let our students be without.
Yep. And I would add to that each school has a principal support fund thanks to the Grand Rapids Public School Foundation. And so those families that may need support can connect with the principal, and we also have lending closets for uniforms that are available. And so we'll do everything we can to provide those supports. Is there a reason why our PEBT cards are being loaded with lunch funding instead of going to a pickup site to be exposed? That's a decision that's made at the state level. I would encourage you to go to our website, grps.org, click the coronavirus resources. There is a frequently asked questions that's posted on there that has that information that's available. What modifications will be made to accommodate developmentally appropriate attention spans for pre-K and early elementary? 3 hours will be a challenge to keep them focused.
I agree. I think that's why we want to make sure that we have some structured times, and there's some flexibility and fluidity with that for those pre-K learners and early elementary learners where there's, brain breaks, so to speak, where you get up, you move, you do some dancing, you come, now let's settle back down for a few moments. And I know that our elementary teachers, lower elementary teachers are thinking about how do they engage their students in kind of some of those movement activities that they're able to do and then settle back down for a period of time.
So, I'm going to kind of blend these two. City High has 8 classes and other 6th through 12th grade schools have a 7-hour day. How will that be accounted for in this virtual learning plan?
Yeah, so Dr. Roby, if I'll take this one. So I understand we have some schools that do not have or have a non-traditional day, the non-6-hour day. We'll be working very closely with their principals to create a schedule that's comparable to the one that we released, taking into account that some schools have a little bit longer day than others or on a block schedule, et cetera. For the majority of our secondary schools, we will be on a 6-hour day, but we will take that into account for those schools that have longer hours and try our very best to have as much uniformity as possible.
Can you help understand why the staff meeting and planning is taking place during instruction time?
So if you think of those if you look at those Mondays and Fridays, so again, we had to find a way to incorporate planning time for the elementary model. So on the Monday, there is of course planning time, but there's also asynchronous learning time. It doesn't mean that students aren't learning during that time or aren't working on assignments. We just are trying to find a space for our elementary teachers. Again, the same way for many of the Friday activities. There are lots of asynchronous assignments on which the students will be working, and we have to put in that plan for our teachers. Planning is very, very important as our teachers create lessons, and we have to ultimately have that. But that doesn't mean that are working on fewer assignments. They will just be working on some asynchronous assignments instead of synchronous assignments.
What are expectations for parent involvement during the synchronous and asynchronous school time?
That's a good question. I think similar to what parents do during the course of a traditional normal school year, checking in with their young people, asking, is this clear? How can I help you? What questions do you have? Are always for parents to be involved. With respect to, and we got this maybe 2 weeks ago or so, there will be times also for the teachers also have hours that they're available for questions and things. And that's another way for parents to be involved, to connect, set up times and appointments with teachers if their young person is struggling, or their child is struggling, or they have questions and follow-up questions that they want to get some more support for.
Will GRPS upload registered students in Seesaw and Google prior to the first day of instruction? This didn't happen as effectively in the spring.
Yeah, so
I would say yes. Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Roby.
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I'm multitasking here. Harrison Park Academy has been on the ball. I have communicated with my daughter's 4th grade teacher, 7th grade teacher. Oh, will students need to wear uniform shirts during virtual classes? I do not believe that is an expectation.
I was going to say, yeah, I don't think, but I don't want to get myself in trouble. And we had that as a requirement this past spring.
No, it's not an expectation. We want students to be ready to learn, but it is not an expectation.
All right. Question, does Seesaw state what system or device it works best on? Chromebook, iPad, laptop, etc.
Yeah, so probably the best person to answer that would be Jonathan Harper. Dr. Roby, with your permission, may we pull Jonathan in?
Sure.
Craig, can you please pull Jonathan in?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, yeah. So the platforms that we've chosen, Seesaw, Google Classroom, are essentially platform agnostic, which means that it's a web-based platform that allows students to access anything within the platform, as long as they have those minimum technology requirements that are defined in the plan that was presented by Dr. Gorman. So when we talk about best platform of access, I do know that our MIS department has been working closely to get those devices upgraded. This question actually comes from some of the feedback that we got about the struggles that we had with iPads early on, but I believe that challenge has been addressed. So, oops.
there's also a note that says that the distance learning grps.org also has recommended system requirements on it for all platforms. So people refer to that.
Thank you.
Correct. Yep.
All right. Is there a consistent scheduled time for elementary students each day for synchronous learning similar to high school?
9 to 12. Yes,
Are textbooks and other materials going to be all online?
I think so. Yes, yes.
How long should I wait to see the slideshow online? I'm not a student parent, so I will not be receiving it as an email. We are going to post that along with the video. This Zoom is being recorded. It typically takes, I think, about 30 to 60 minutes before it uploads. So to give us a little bit of time, we will have this posted no later than tomorrow, but our goal is to have it up later tonight. Will the if you get packets due to special education, how do they get turned in and graded? Since in the spring they didn't have to be turned in.
That's so you can do it a couple of different ways. You could mail them back, of course. There's also ways to take a picture of it and email it to the corresponding teacher so he or she is able to look at the work. Also during a Zoom experience or even a phone call, talking through the assignments with the classroom teacher or the special education teacher related to the work. So it kind of depends on families and students' needs and choices. And then also that teacher that will be working with that family.
Will there be any way for theme schools to continue with their themes during distance learning? Can teachers tailor the curriculum within their own classes to support the theme, or are they using a district-wide curriculum for everything?
They should be using their traditional curriculum for their school site. And of course, I know that also should be, by grade level standards by Michigan Department of Education, but teachers will have some flexibility and certainly creativity in this structure to tailor lessons related to things that they're teaching as part of the curriculum.
Will there be a schedule for split classrooms at the elementary level? Is that being given by the district?
Are you referring to split classrooms like a fourth and fifth grade split, or are we talking about?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Will staff have any new technology? My Surface Pro freezes. I would encourage you to contact Help Desk, Deb, and share that information. In the spring, we worked to accommodate staff members with both devices as well as those who may also need internet access. So contact the MIS Help Desk. Will there be a therapist available for support?
Therapists for students or?
For students?
Yes, I mean, we have those resources available at present. So yes, we will have support staff, counselors, school psychologists, all of those staff that we have previously had employed. They will be available for support for students.
All right. Who to contact about sports for high school? My child plays at Ottawa Hills. Please to direct us where to find all sports info. You can contact the athletic directors at both Union and Ottawa High School. That information is available on the website. And I know they are also working to post the schedules as well as the upcoming games that are being planned. How much homework will be given to high schoolers? Would like to see approximately how much time daily is required.
That really is an individual classroom teacher's kind of depending on the subject area. So I don't think either of us can fully answer and say it's going to be this amount of time or that amount of time. If you're discovering that the homework is too much, I would suggest that you have that conversation with the classroom teacher to find out exactly the expectations related to that work so that students are able to be successful.
Will student pictures be taken and will students get pictures and an ID card this year?
Dr. Gorman, I'm gonna let you handle that.
We are going to have to work through that. Of course, we're not going to be in person, and as soon as we can be in person, we will get all the pictures taken with ID cards, etc. If there are some things for which the students need IDs, of course, you contact the building secretary or the building principal, and we'll do our very best to go in our database and grab a picture from before if an ID is needed for something. So we will address those on an extenuated circumstance basis, but as of right now, there are no plans to make IDs district-wide.
This is kind of a follow-up to the question about use of Zoom. Will teachers be able to use Zoom instead of Google Meet for synchronous learning? There were some concerns that Google Meet has more limitations.
Sure. When we have our teacher professional learning, we'll be sharing all of the approved video conferencing resources that are there for our teachers. Of course, we have to ensure that everything meets our needs, and we need to ensure that privacy issues are addressed, etc. So when teachers have professional learning, which will be relatively quickly, we will be announcing this. Actually, we'll be announcing soon the different video conferencing platforms that we will be using.
Dr. Roby, what is your hope for our students in Grand Rapids during this distance learning time?
My hope is one that students do have a rich experience. My hope is that young people are engaged. I know that this is a challenging time for families. I know this is a challenging time for students and for staff. We are trying our level best to make the best decisions and making it engaging and rigorous and relevant for students and for staff. The advantage related to this is that it does provide an opportunity for us to be creative and think of school in a very different way in which we haven't before. But my hope is that it is a meaningful experience for students and that our staff are finding new ways to kind of connect with their young people to make it a positive experience in this time, because we want it to be a positive experience. I know there is nothing like in-person learning, so I am not insensitive to that. I want to make sure that students have a rich, powerful, engaging experience where they feel like I'm really being challenged and I'm liking what I'm doing. I'm enjoying my school year.
What about after school clubs? There's the Loop after school program that's being done virtually, but what about other after school clubs?
Other than athletics and Loop, there are no after-school clubs taking place at present.
Will it be easy for students to trade in iPads received last spring for Chromebooks? Craig, do you want to jump in on that one?
Sure, yes. So when we do device distribution, parents who have iPads that need to be traded for Chromebooks because their student has gone to the next grade level will be able to do so at the device distribution sites. So the same reservation system that will be in place for obtaining a new device would be the same for trading in device for the appropriate device.
Will teachers be able to send home items for students to work on?
Send home items like physical.
That's what
items?
I think she's asking is, in addition to the virtual, would they be able to send like packets home for
No, I
students
mean,
to work on?
no, I don't see how we would be able to do that. And I certainly don't want to encourage or invite teachers to start doing that at their own expense.
What will distance learning look like for specialty programs like Zoo and Blandford that has more outdoor hands-on learning?
Unfortunately, at this time, many of those things that we could do outdoors, we can't do. We are going to do our very best to tie the curriculum to the school's theme. It will look different. We need to do our very best. You know, I think of some of the theme schools out there right now that tie their assignments to the theme, even when they're in class. So it will look different. We're hopeful that after this time we can get back to normal, but we will be making connections to our theme, but of course we will not be outside with these programs.
Why is there so much asynchronous time for high schoolers? A class would normally meet 5 times each week, now only meets 2 times. Why can't there be more synchronous time at the high school level?
So you have, okay, thank you, Dr. Roy. So we have 4 days with synchronous time. So we have Monday through Thursday with synchronous time, of course, 3-hour blocks. We want to be very sensitive to screen time as well. So we think there is a lot more synchronous time than there was, or we know there's a lot now in the fall than there was in the spring. But again, we want to be very sensitive to screen time. So of course, there are 3 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, but then there are lots of asynchronous activities as well. But we do have synchronous work Monday through Thursday for our high school students.
Will there be additional virtual help available via teachers or teacher assistants during the asynchronous time for students that are struggling?
Yes, and so we do have para support. We do have, again, when we go into some of those asynchronous or smaller groups, teachers are able to send students into smaller groups to provide some more individualized or small group instruction. And then those folks who have a support teacher, a co-teacher, they'll be working also very closely with those groups to provide individualized needs, to work with their individualized needs.
With this unusual learning format, will the Common Core standards be streamlined?
We're going to continue to teach the Michigan standards, which in many regards are the Common Core standards. We're going to do our very best to teach the Michigan standards to prepare our students the very best we can. Of course, we are not in a face-to-face learning environment, so some standards will need to be modified, but we are going to continue to teach the standards during this time.
Is there a possibility of opening a small number of buildings to accommodate childcare needs of working parents while distance learning is in place?
We are not able to do that at this time.
How does virtual learning look for paraprofessionals?
We are all hands on deck in the Grand Rapids Public Schools. If you're a paraprofessional, if you're a dean, if you're a youth advocate, we need you to ensure, we need all of those employees, all of those aforementioned employees to help our students become successful. So that's supporting teachers during this virtual environment, helping students who may have difficulty logging on, so reaching out to them. But again, there are many ways that all of our support staff can help our students. And what I just mentioned are a few, but we need all hands on deck during this period.
I'm just kind of trying to go through and see what options for non-athletic extracurricular activities will there be for the first 9 weeks. I think we just answered that right now, with the exception of after school loop and athletics, there is no other after school extracurricular planned at this time. Will community partners like Arbor Circle, KSSN, who are assisting families, receive training to help them, such as training on Seesaw and Google Meet?
So our community partners have been just wonderful with asking, what can we do to help, in this new structure? And I know that a couple were just listed. We will continue those ongoing relationships and tailor what our needs are and our ask to kind of what comes up, and to ensure that we are using them as resources for other supports within the district and within the community.
Appreciate all of the logistical information. This is very important. What is GRPS planning to make? What is GRPS planning to make the beginning of the school year exciting and fun for our students?
That is a great question. And to that point, we want it to be exciting and fun. Everyone knows the beginning of school can be a fun time. I know that teachers have begun thinking about how do they build community within their classrooms, how do they set the tone around expectations and such. And that will, of course, continue. It'll look different than what it has normally, but they are very excited about reaching out to their students, introducing themselves to their students, and getting to know their young people that they'll be working with, and building that classroom community so that there is a buzz and a sense of excitement as they begin the school year.
GRPS established partnerships with various colleges. One is a partnership with GVSU Math Department. Will we be able to, in particular, our pre-service teachers work grades 2 through 4 on mathematics? Will we still be able to do this virtually?
Again, as it relates to pre-service teachers, we are going to be given some direction early next week. Lots of student teachers in the school district, lots of education folks who are in education who have worked with us in the past. We're trying to keep everybody safe. We're trying to limit the number of folks who are in our buildings. We are going to be very sensitive to their needs, but safety is going to be the number one priority. Again, we'll have that answered early next week as it relates to who will be supporting our teachers in their classrooms and our students.
Which virtual platform will teachers use to communicate with students?
Which virtual platform?
At Seesaw and
Seesaw, Google Classroom, Schoology for some of our pilot schools. Is that what we mean, or something else?
yeah, I think so. Yep. There are quite a few questions, and I think we addressed it earlier, but I'm going to pose it again since there's 110 additional questions on top of the 109 we've answered. And it's really coming from parents, full-time working parents, that are concerned about how to handle their jobs while also supporting their students at home. And it goes back to the question around what supports is the district providing? Are we providing childcare? What else can the district do to support these families?
So no, unfortunately, we are not able to provide childcare at this time. I think it is important. It is a question. We'll make sure that we have some links of resources and such within the community. And I don't know of an organization, as I say this, that may be offering some resources, but we will certainly try to help make some of those connections, and then connecting also parents with back to their schools to find out through their pals or parent advocate groups, what are some other available resources related to that?
All right. Will there be a mechanism for schools to distribute textbooks, graphing calculators, or other non-typical school supplies?
We want to be very careful with any items that we distribute. So of course, we're going to be distributing laptops to our students, iPads to our students, but there are no plans at this time to distribute any other materials. We want to ensure that we keep everyone safe. When we distribute these items, even at the meal services sites, we're taking every precaution necessary. So at the current time, we are not planning on handing out any of the items that you referenced. We'll be doing our best to work exclusively from our laptops and from our iPad. If there are extra items that are needed for students, and then we will address those items accordingly.
All right, we're coming to the end of the hour here. I'm going to do do two more questions here. If a family decides that this model of limited instruction does not work and they transfer to another area high school, will GRPS allow students to play sports for the high school in the new district they transfer to?
I think we have to follow the MHSA guidelines related to that. That's not a GRPS decision. That comes from the High School Athletic Association, and would have to follow those guidelines.
Yep. All right, let's get to our last question here. Will school activities still happen like field trips and dances? I will take a stab at this, as I know that our friends at the GRPS Foundation fund many different field trips. And those field trips are in many ways only possible thanks to that external private funding. Due to COVID and due to the uncertainty, there's been a pause on field trips for this year. Dr. Gorman, if you want, I don't know if you want to speak to other beyond that. I know that if we were to return in person, and there may be opportunities and done so safely, we would consider some limited trips, but that's still to be determined.
When it is safe, John, when it is safe, we will start getting these things again.
All right, well, we still have 109 outstanding questions. Want to thank everyone for posing the questions, for giving us the time to respond. We were able to answer 115 questions. We will be posting this video as well as the PowerPoint in English and Spanish. And we will be using the questions that are in the Q&A that will be incorporated into this ongoing living, breathing, frequently asked questions document. And we just want to thank you, Dr. Roby, Dr. Gorman, any closing remarks?
I would just reiterate, we do thank the community for their questions. Some of them are, we don't have the answers to, but it helps us to kind of dive deeper and ask, how do we support? What have we forgotten? So I am very appreciative of the feedback and of the questions. Our team is very sensitive to the needs of how do we make our school year the best school year that it can be for our young people and for our students and staff. So again, thank you for your questions. We will try our best to answer the questions. And then also you've given us some things to think about where we did not have tight answers or that we hadn't considered. So I do appreciate the thought around the questions as well.
Just thank you for this opportunity. We will get all of your questions answered as soon as possible. And we just appreciate your support that not only you provided in the spring and fall, but that you always provide. So thank you, community, for being here this evening. and we're going to do our very best for your students.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.